Hey friends, it's dinner time. We had a nice Christmas day here on the homestead, but now we want some comfort food. Just me and Kelly here for dinner tonight. And nothing says comfort food more than chicken fried steak. So stick around and we're going to make our favorite dinner. So my go-to comfort food dinner is either chicken fried steak or fried chicken, something like that. Mashed potatoes, gravy, and corn. So we're going to do all that for you tonight. So the things that takes the longest is our potatoes. So I usually figure 1 potato per person when I'm making mashed potatoes, unless they're very large potatoes, and then we can go a little bit less. But I got some Yukon Gold potatoes in here just cubed up, and we've got them to a boil. So the next thing we're going to do is we have our New York strip steak here. We're going to do a nice princess trim on these and get most of the fat off of it, just have like the center medallion, and then we are going to beat the snot out of it with that. Now, so many people after a hectic day would be tempted to hit that drive-thru, but this is pretty much a really quick fast food meal that you're making at home. Then it's so much better for you, and you're saving a lot of money by cooking it yourself at home. By the time you go to the drive-thru and back, you could have this on the table. We have our saute pan heating up. Remember to heat your pan before you put your oil in. We're using a neutral flavored oil. We have our breading station set up over here. We've got our steaks pounded into really nice thin cutlets. Don't worry about that stuff. It will not go to waste. So we have a cup of flour here with a tablespoon of our favorite seasoning that you see me use a lot on the channel. And that's about the right ratio when you're frying stuff. If you don't have a favorite seasoning, just use a teaspoon of salt, teaspoon of pepper, and maybe a teaspoon of garlic powder. We'll do about the same thing for you, and that'll give you a nice flavor. So we've got this mixed up. And then we also season everything else. We've salt and peppered our meat. We also salt and pepper our egg. So what we'll do with our chicken fried steak, once our oil is ready in our pan and it starts to shimmer, we'll take our steak and we'll coat it in the egg, and then we will coat it in the seasoned flour. Now some people, if you really like breading, will go back into the egg and then back into the flour, and that'll give you a really thick breading. But I like the flavor of the meat to come through a little bit better, and I like the texture better with just one dip. But if you're a breading fan, do a double. Our steaks are in. They've been in for about 30 seconds or so. We're frying on medium heat. And once they get good and brown on one side, we'll flip them over, get them brown on the other. You don't have to worry about them cooking through the center because these are pretty thin steaks. And then our potatoes are doing nicely over here. Do not throw away your flour because we have a use for that here in a minute. Now a good sign when these are ready to flip is when the blood starts coming up through the top. I do the same thing with burgers when I'm frying burgers. When the blood starts running to the top, it's time to flip. So let's give our first one over here a flip. Looking very nice. You notice we're not sticking to this pan that isn't non-stick because we got a hot pan before we put the oil in and then we heated the oil. If you do that, you're not going to stick. So we'll brown this and then we'll pull those out over here onto our paper towel lined plate. Got our fantastic chicken fried steak out. We've turned this down to low because we're going to use this here in a second. But while that rests, our potatoes are now fork tender. We're going to drain these and we're going to make mashed potatoes out of them. For our mashed potatoes, after they're drained, we put in a half a stick of butter, which is a 1/4 cup. We put in about the same amount of sour cream, maybe a little bit more, and salt and pepper. So we're going to mash these up. You don't want to go too crazy whipping these things up because you'll develop the gluten in the potatoes and it'll turn into a sticky mess. So just beyond lumpy is where you want to stop. And taste it for salt when you're done. You'd be surprised how much salt it takes to make the mashed potatoes taste fantastic. Just add it a couple pinches at a time until it tastes right, and you'll have some fantastic mashed potatoes. Potatoes are done. Real nice fluffy potatoes. They're not overdone, and they're skin on because I like them skin on. Now if you like garlic mashed potatoes, you could put about a tablespoon of minced garlic in there. Stir that up and you need to have garlic mashed potatoes. We are back to our skillet. We poured all of about a quarter cup of liquid or grease out of the skillet. I use a coffee cup because these are made to take hot liquid. They're not going to break. I do the same thing with my bacon grease, and I keep that up there. So we cook this flour in, and the good thing is that's our seasoned flour from over there. So it's already got a good seasoning in it. So once the flour cooks a little bit, we're going to turn back up to medium. And when this starts to bubble, if you remember our sauce ratio or gravy ratio, quarter cup fat, quarter cup flour to 2 cups of liquid. Now if you wanted chicken gravy, you'd use chicken stock. If you wanted beef gravy, you'd use beef stock. We want a country gravy or white gravy, so we're using milk. If you were cooking another dish and wanted like a wine gravy, you could put a cup of wine and a cup of stock in there, throw in some mushrooms, maybe some onions, and you'd have a really good sauce that way too. Super simple, sky's the limit on gravy. It just really makes the difference which liquid you put in it. You change your fats up as well. You could use butter, you could use olive oil, any kind of fat you want in there. Now you single guys and gals, you learn how to make gravy and sauces like that, you're not going to be single very long. There's your secret. Dump your liquid in all at once, and that cold liquid is going to deglaze the bottom of that pan and pull all the nice little brown bits up. Now when this comes to a boil, this is as thick as it's going to get. So if it's too thick, you just add a little bit more liquid is all you got to do. So while we're at this point, we're going to take our vegetable, which is corn, out of the freezer. And our trick in the winter is to use these steamable vegetables. We buy a bunch of these when they go on sale. If you look at the ingredients here on the back, corn. That's all there is. And in 6 minutes in the microwave, you have a vegetable for dinner. Now right after you pour the liquid in, I use one of these because it's really good for incorporating dry stuff or wet stuff in the dry stuff. You want to whip it pretty good. You could use a whisk if you wanted, but it's hard to get down into the corners of the pan with a whisk. You could also use a flat spatula, would work good, so you can cover the whole bottom. And then once it's incorporated, as it heats, you need to come in here and stir and get the thickening stuff off the bottom, because it's going to thicken on the bottom first, right? So you don't want that stuff to burn. So every, 30 seconds or so, it won't take long, stir this up. Now I like to see a little bit of pepper in my gravy, and you can see it's kind of light, so I've added some pepper. We'll incorporate that real quick. That's not a lot for the amount of gravy that we have, but now you can see a little bit of pepper in the gravy. You also want to taste this for salt, because you need this to taste good as well. All of your layers need to have flavor, so you're not detracting from the flavor of whatever you're putting it on. So we'll give this a taste. It needs a little bit of salt. We'll put a pinch or two in there. Alright, that tastes good now. We'll just wait for that to come to a simmer. We're getting ready for our corn over here. I got 2 tablespoons of butter and some salt in my bowl. There's not a lot of liquid in those bags once you open them up, so we don't have to worry about that. But if you're using like a canned corn, you would want to cook the corn in your liquid that comes in the can, and once it's cooked, drain that liquid off, and then replace that liquid with a little bit of butter and a little bit of salt. I guarantee you your corn's going to taste so much better. Our corn's in our bowl. It's going to melt that butter down and it'll be ready. We'll stir it up once we're ready to serve it. Our gravy has come up to a simmer. You can see it's nice and thick now. Now one thing I want to caution you of, some people like to cook their roux a lot longer to give the gravy a darker color. The longer you cook the roux in the pan, the less thickening power it's going to have for your liquid. So if you like a darker gravy, darker roux, hold back about half of your liquid, dump half of it in, stir it up, bring it to a simmer, and see what your texture is. If you need more, you can add more a little bit at a time until you get the texture that you want for your gravy. Now, as this cools, it'll get thicker and thicker and thicker as it cools. So that's another way to thicken it up, is just let it cool off a little bit. But we're spot on because we used our ratio, quarter cup to 2 cups of liquid. I worked all that out for you folks, so it takes all the guesswork out. So it's time for dinner. Let's get her going. All right, we're all done. Doesn't that just scream comfort food right there? Serve it with a nice soft buttered bread roll, and you got a fantastic comfort food dinner. Now, some of you may be asking, where's the gravy on that chicken fried steak? Well, I got a little secret way that I eat it. I cut off a little piece of chicken fried steak and I dip it into my gravy and mashed potatoes. So I got a little bit on the whole bite. It's amazing that way. Give it a try. Now, we weren't slaving away in the kitchen either. This took all of about 30 minutes. So don't think this takes 2 hours to make. It's super fast. And if you do it kind of in that order that I did it, everything's going to kind of come out at the same time. So hope you enjoyed our comfort food dinner. We hope you give it a try too. So until next time, stay safe, stay healthy. We love you guys. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. We hope you all had the best of holiday. See ya.